In addition to my colleague Kurt at the shop, we have our friend James Bourne joining us from Authentic. James, well, he was just telling us how he's primarily the wine guy from Authentic, but has a soft spot for whiskey and by default is the biggest expert at Authentic Wine and Spirits for Scotch whiskey. So
Well, the
we
more
get to
whiskey
chat
you
with
sell,
him.
Andrew, the more I get to be involved. So
There you go. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you, even sometimes when it's completely unplanned or expected because you just happen to be there and it works out great anyway. If you didn't catch the order from the email or the note I sent to the chat, there you go. We're going to do the 10 to start. Then we're going to do the air dried followed by the kiln dried and then cask strength. And then we're going to do the 3 Benromach peat smoke bottlings, starting with what was originally just the peat smoke, but then the 2014 vintages. Before we dip into that, because we got your attention, quick reminder, we've got some new January tastings on the site, including the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which is early this year, January 3rd for the virtual, and a few others. And we're going to dump a bunch more in the coming days. But until then, we've still got no image for Blinded by Bourbon. I've been joking about that for several days now. Evan and Harmony. We've got a Glenn Farkless family cask tasting with Deborah Stewart with, I think it was like 216-ish years of family casks. And then a bunch of stuff in store. We've got a Holyrood launch tasting. We've got the Macbeth tasting with Lily, the new Macbeth range from Elixir Distillers. Our Burns Bash has been bumped, as Evan likes to joke. The Scottish Bard has been bumped by the English Bard for a day, but we're still going to do that festival. And then Sean has been putting together a list for a rum tasting. There's more than that to come to. I know there's going to be a Waterford tasting, a boutique tasting, a sponge tasting, and a bunch of other stuff. And that Macbeth lineup that we're doing in store, we're going to do a virtual version of that too. So that's coming up. The other thing I wanted to just put out there into the universe is we've got an online auction item that is, there's 4 hours and 51 minutes left to bid on it. And the reason I bring it up is it is a tasting that we are prepared to do either in store or virtually if you happen to be outside of the Calgary area. The value on this on a retail level is $4,000. The proceeds go 100% to the food bank. The current bid is $2,100, which is half the retail face value of it. Would love to see that get a little higher. And as I said, if maybe you've got a club in a different city or just a group of friends, I'm happy to make it a virtual tasting as opposed to an in-person one. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, as they say. I'll put the link in the chat. But yeah, that closes tonight in a few hours' time. It is going to the food bank. There's some cool stuff in there, including our Bladnock 1988 in the lineup, our new Craig Yalicki cask, and some other delicious treats, but something to look forward to. That's not why we're here. As I said, we're here to taste some Benromach. Benromach's a distillery we love talking about because it's old school, but new school at the same time. Old school in the sense that they make whiskey in a very traditional way, the way that the industry looked at it, 50, 100 years ago. But it's also modern and traditional in the sense that they're not adverse to innovation. They're not adverse to trying new things. Ultimately, they're consistently putting out some of the best whiskey that we've had the pleasure of sampling. The distillery is owned by Gordon MacPhail, and I think we could go into that deep, but I don't think we need to. That's a big part of why Benromach is making such good whiskey, is because this is a company that's not thinking about it from the standpoint of next year or the year after, or frankly, even a decade from now. This is a company that's taking a distillery and charting a path that's looking decades into the future for sustainability. So lots of cool things to sample here, but we got to start off with the flagship. We need a baseline. And we're starting off with the Benromach 10-year-old, which we must have sold the last bottle of today because I just noticed it is out of stock. We'll remedy that next week. We do have a pretty good selection of Benromachs on the shelf, though, as occasioned by our lineup here, as proven by our lineup here. But yeah, this is the Benromach 10-year bottled 43%, a mix of bourbon and sherry casks. And I love how it's still there on the bottle, exclusively first fill cask matured. Gentlemen, Benromach 10, what do we think right off the bat?
James, go ahead, buddy.
All right. I thought we were going to do it alphabetically, but
We go random.
yeah.
Basically, whoever I see first and blurt out their name.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This is like quickly becoming kind of like an old friend for me. It's like just, gets the palate going. It's got that perfect mix of smoke. Remember the first time I tried this, I thought it was pretty aggressively smoky for what it is. But I don't know. I think the way it shows today, it's more the sweetness and lots of cask, but just, very well balanced. Perfect way to kind of wet the palate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know we've tried it recently. I mean, we tried it when we did the cask launch tasting, and it showed really well. But I don't know that I paid enough attention to it because we had some other really cool things in that lineup. But the nose on this is very approachable. I don't get much of the peat on the nose, but some nice chocolate tones, some nice sherry. It's creamy and fruity. It's a nice and like kind of jujubes. Kurt, what do you get on the nose?
That horse blankety kind of sweaty barn smell, which to me, is literally the apex of whiskey. That's the style I have for more than anything. That farmyardy kind of quality. Unquestionably, in my opinion, the best 10-year-old on the market right now. I would have said it was Ardbeg or Springbank up until the last couple of years, but I think this is my absolute favorite 10-year-old.
I mean, I can see where that sort of musty funkiness comes in. I don't know that I personally find this like horse blankety, but granted, my frame of reference with horse blankets is admittedly low due to allergies. The palate on this, I think it matches the nose quite well. Sweet, fruity. There's both that balance of chocolate, honey, and vanilla, and some nice soft fruits in there too.
There's a lot of honey on that.
Yeah. I think the thing I always think about with this too, as I sit with it longer, is like this is really a spirit that's been designed to go like the distance. And the fact that the 10 like shows so well and it's like not overly fainty or feels incomplete, I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no shortage of young tasting 10, 12-year-old whiskeys out there. A lot of them, and we talk about how much we love refill cask whiskeys, but for a lot of spirits, like 10 years in refill is just not enough to make something really super compelling.
Yeah, for sure.
They are, I should say, Benromach is filling transport casks quite literally with the intent of getting 50, 60, 70, even 80 years out of them. So they still fill those to this day.
Yeah.
So geeks in the room should light up over that. Transport casks are they're the sort of unofficial buzzy kind of thing nowadays. Everybody used to think of old bodega sherry casks, which we subsequently learned was kind of a bullshit concept. Those barrels are still in situ, or those casks are still in situ in most places until they're retired. It was transport casks that were actually lighting up the sherry world for so long. So the fact that G&M still has stores of these gorgeous old barrels that are probably going to give incredible long-term aging is beyond exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only sad that none of us will be around to sample an 80-year-old Benromach. Probably. I mean, I'm just going to play the odds on that one, but I'd say the chances are not high. So
I'm not aiming for it either. It'll be a wreck by that point, man.
exactly. We've said this before. I mean, it's no secret. My only knock on this whiskey, if I had one at all, would be I'd love to see this at 45 or 46%. But the big but in all this is I know that they're aiming for a wider audience on this than they feel they could get at a higher ABV. And given the fact it's 43%, it is still lots of character. It's a great whiskey. If I had to be picky about one thing, it would be that. And one thing I can't be picky about is the price. I mean, the price on this was what? Was it $74? I'm just flipping back. $74 for God's sake.
Well, to give you a little insight behind the scenes, I mean, Gordon MacPhail comes to us and says, what should the price of Benromach be?
mhm.
And it was very easy. It's like, let's just make it the same price it is in the UK, all across Canada. And they were like, deal. And that was the entire conversation.
Yeah, and I mean,
Amazing.
to figure out how complicated that is, I mean, it's actually a fairly progressive way for companies to look at it, because especially for something like this, which is a product that you want wide distribution on, you're trying to make it so that it's the same price around the world. It's complicated because even within Canada, you've got different tax structures in different markets. You have government monopoly markups in certain markets, transport costs. And then not only that, but I think it's forced companies like Benromach, Gordon MacPhail, who've been very good at this, to look at what they sell things for in the UK market, where they can ship it direct from the distillery to the retailer. They've had to figure out how to do that so that they have fair pricing around the world. And I think it's incredible that they put that much effort into trying to make it fair.
Yeah, again, that's the whole looking long term. Like, there's not someone behind a desk saying, like, man, I got to make my bonus this year. Let's jack the price up.
Yeah. Well,
Because,
and James, is like, we could look at this and say that's true of the 15 and even the 21, and the 21's at a point now where it's maybe stocking out more frequently, but they're not looking at this as, all right, this year we got X for it, next year we need X plus 10 or X plus 20. They're looking at it from the standpoint of, we want this brand to be sustainable long term. And if we raise our prices too high and the market turns, we can't dial them back, or it's going to be really hard / embarrassing to dial them back.
yeah, I remember reading, I think it was last year, 2022, Chivas Brothers spent 180 million pounds just on distillery renovations.
Yeah.
Like, the whiskey industry has gotten used to some pretty juicy profits. And Gordon MacPhail, I feel like, is sitting in the corner going like, no, we remember the 80s. You know, we remember the 40s. We know.
Yeah.
And they're
Um,
they're forward thinking.
it's a fascinating way to think about it, because I think we are at a point where there's definitely going to be some corrections done. And, I honestly don't know how companies that have pushed the envelope too far are going to readjust, because they're going to look stupid doing it. And there's an adjustment coming. How big that adjustment's going to be is hard to say. But I've been predicting this for 4 or 5 years, and it's come to bear. So
It is well, yeah. I mean, I'm one step ahead, and it's happening.
yeah. All right, let's go on. We want to try this next pair of contrast bottlings as just that, a pair. We have the air dried oak and the kiln dried oak. And full disclosure, we decided which order to put these two in based on alphabetical criteria. So rigorously scientific. But one thing that I think is really interesting here is I just briefly nosed the two of them. So there's the air dried oak. It's a 2012 bottling, 10 years of age, 46%. Air dried in virgin oak casks. And then the sister bottling, and I just got to move this taskbar. Where is it here? The kiln dried oak 2012. So two different types of oak. Now, James, you've probably had to sell these more than I have personally to other people. You've had to sell them to retailers. Do you want to maybe just like fill us in a little bit, like on, obviously they're trying to compare two different styles of seasoned wood here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, from a salesman's perspective, truthfully, this has probably been the trickiest. The triple distilled was a little bit tricky as well, but
Which is so
I
good,
find that,
dude. Yeah.
like, the Benromach team has been really good the last 10 years. If you think of like the things that are coming out, they've done a good job of like doing some innovation, creating things that are interesting without kind of going like too far out there. And I feel like this is like maybe just a little bit on that side. But
You think it's too out there for,
yeah, just for like the average consumer that sees them on the shelf, it is a little bit confusing, I think.
yeah.
So, I think the word will get out as people get them, and you kind of have to buy them as a pair too.
Mhm.
Yeah, but
I mean,
the
when
first
you
thing I think, nosing this is anyone who wants the 10-year-old at 46%. It's like, here you go.
Yeah, James, I was going to add to that. You don't have to buy them as a pair, but I think you're suggesting as a whiskey nerd, you must.
Well,
Or-
I mean, who doesn't look at them and think like, oh, you know what? I'll just take the kiln dried.
Well, it's interesting to me because the nose on them they're both decadent, toasty, but the kiln dried oak is almost straying into much more tropical tones to me on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah, one is definitely fruitier than the other.
Kurt?
Yeah, the kiln dried is spicier, it's fruitier, it's more vibrant. The air dried, and maybe it's power suggestion to a degree, but it seems just slightly more oxidized, just slightly tamer than the kiln dried. I think again, you're toasting wood, you're going to bring a lot more. You're caramelizing things, and you're extracting at that point. I can't lie, I was not excited about virgin oak. It's one of my least favorite things in whiskey, but these are bangers, both of them.
Wow. So I haven't even tried the kiln dried oak yet, but the air dried oak is like a vanilla bomb. It's like my mouth has been assaulted by like white chocolate Hershey's Kisses, vanilla cupcakes with vanilla frosting. It is just vanilla, 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 vanilla. It is over the top rich.
With a mouthful of hay or barley or something too.
The malt is there, but I mean, man, that coating of vanillins is just over the top.
There's not a lot of malts in Scotland that would take 10 years in virgin oak like this.
Maybe something heavily peated. Just
Yeah.
and then you're not really talking the malt, you're talking the peat is going to surge through it. You know, a chocolate malt in virgin oak like that could be kind of interesting just to see what that does.
Like, doesn't this remind you a little bit of that Glenallachie Cuvée 2012?
I mean, sort of like that one is
More just stylistically and philosophically in how it's built.
Yeah.
Not in the flavor profile necessarily, but
okay. Philosophically, yes, I see where you're going with that. But man, the nose on the kiln dried, you know, in addition to those tropical tones, like it's got some of that classic, like really intense oak congener character that you'd expect from a lot of bourbons or other whiskeys that have been matured full term in virgin oak.
These are crazy well done for what they are, but they're still not my style. They're still too cask driven for me.
yeah, which interestingly, even though everything's always first fill at Benromach, like I wouldn't always describe Benromach as being like a cask heavy single malt.
No, I think that's why
These are for sure. So for someone who's like into that like kind of like modern style of like, well, let's be honest, like the Billy Walker style of like cask dousing, like here's your Benromach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting how different they are on the palate. The kiln dried one, and it matches with what we were saying about the nose. It's so much spicier, earthier. Like there's a much different profile to it. And I kind of agree with you, Kurt. Like I actually would be happy to drink these. Like my God, like the base level whiskeys in a lot of places are so slim pickings a lot of times. But yeah, I mean, this is probably not stuff that I personally would purchase
Would
bottles
you make
of.
an old fashioned with this? Is it too expensive?
I would do that.
James, I've literally used every bourbon in my house to make cocktails, regardless of baseline price.
Well, what
So,
I'm thinking is that like this with like some good kind of more of an austere style of vermouth, like something not quite as rich, would actually be a pretty damn good Manhattan.
I actually have the vermouth for you. It's one we import through our Spanish negociant called, I think it's Sala, Xalar. And it's got a sexy bottle too. So it's not as intense a vermouth as here. I'll just throw that up on the screen. So that's an interesting thought, James. I'm actually somewhat tempted to.
Yeah, why not? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
like I don't think with something like this that you're spoiling the whiskey, like by any stretch.
Yeah. Kurt's
just to
laughing at
answer,
us because we went down Cocktail Street.
No, you guys are gonna make me come out like the overprotective dude, you know, with his girlfriend here. I adore Benromach, and even though I said these are like not 100% my style, Andrew, you're dead on accurate, man. As like we're talking like kind of baseline level whiskeys here, and they're head and shoulders above everything else on the market still. There's
Yeah.
no way this, not even water is touching this. Like
For
it's pretty.
sub $100 whiskeys,
Get away from my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you remember that these are sub $100, it's
Mhm.
actually pretty remarkable.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just to answer Kevin's question, it was kind of mine as well. Honestly, the impression I got here is that this was a happy accident where their supplier. I don't think suppliers always necessarily even specify if stuff is air dried versus kiln dried. I mean, I think the assumption is that it's usually air dried,
Well,
but I think they just kind of ended up with being offered these kiln dried, and it was like they can either end up in, our mix of stuff, or like let's do something interesting with it.
yeah. I mean, I think the problem with especially the kiln dried is you put that kiln dried virgin oak and mix it into the 10-year-old, you're going to tweak the profile quite a bit.
Totally.
So,
Totally.
I love, initially like my first impression was, wow, air dried is gorgeous. It's just so lush. But I think the kiln dried's got a bit, at least to my palate, a bit more complexity. Like maybe it's you're creating channels so the spirit can penetrate deeper into the wood, but it's a richer, more complex spirit. They're both great, but the kiln dried is lighting up my palate.
I'll bet you the air dried could have gone long though.
Oh yeah,
It's tame, it's soft, like you said, super creamy and stuff,
no
right?
bitterness.
Yeah.
Well, Kurt, you know that surely, some of this stuff, like I know they hold back some of the stock of the peat smokes and the organic, because I think even you got to think the way Gordon MacPhail thinks, right? Like one day they would love to release like an organic Benromach 25. I know for a fact,
Mhm.
right? But it's about finding the cask that will do it.
I'd love to see a contrast pair of 25-year-old whiskeys. I mean, and
Coming. It's
at that
coming.
point, what is the science? Oh, we'll be able to replicate this in 25 years.
Yeah.
So if you like it. But Matthew's saying the air dried has a great farminess to it.
Well, you definitely get more of the spirit in the air dried.
Mhm.
Yeah, that farminess, man, it's DNA for this distillery. To me, it's like the farmyard note. It's like warm leather, like suede or something. It's a little bit of orange, a little bit of tangerine, really, really soft, creamy notes on top of that too.
Mhm.
Their DNA, like the heart of the spirit, is so consistent and so good.
Yeah. Well, and Kurt, like we've talked about this, we did this at the last tasting in October. Benromach, we've previously compared it in different guises to Springbank and Brora. And I think with these, you could almost go into a slightly different direction. You could almost say like it's starting to be like a little Ben Nevis-esque in terms of with those sort of gooey, decadent, fruity tones mixed with the farminess at the same time.
Which there's nothing like that on the market, man.
Oh, anyway. Well, Kurt, you said something similar to where I'm feeling right now. Maybe I'd be slightly more charitable. I was interested to see what these were going to be like. I didn't have any preconceived notions, and they are far better than I thought they were going to be. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll have no trouble selling these whiskeys because they're great.
Yeah, full disclosure, they're selling slow so far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could argue why that is, James. That
I
could
know.
be a broader trend.
I'm not worried either. I'm not
yeah.
worried either.
But they're great. They're great value. So quite happy with those. All right, let's tee up the Cask Strength 2013 batch one. Now, James, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to put you somewhat on the spot for this. Why do they do this? Why do they declare batch one, batch two vintages? Because it almost makes you think there's going to be like batch three, batch four of certain vintages. But
Well, what makes it even more confusing, Andrew, is that like last year is a good example. The 2012, I believe there was 3 batches, and only one of the batches went to North America, but that entire batch went to North America because I ordered so much of it.
yeah.
So we didn't get batch 1 here. We got batch 2, which I have tried them side by side. Like they're not identical, for sure not. But Yeah, I think the truth of these batches is if it's selling well, you know, Stuart gets a call and is basically told like, hey, can you like cough up another batch? So I don't know if it's always like fully, you know, planned out.
But it's, yeah, they've put the note there just in case they need to make more of it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
All right. So for this particular batch, distilled 2013, aged 10 years, combination of bourbon and sherry cask. Spoiler alert, they were exclusively first fill, and the strength is 59.7%. So, Kurt, you've already got your nose in this one. What do we think of the cask strength?
I was so keen to properly spend a little bit of time with this one because this one I did grab right away when it came into the shop. The others I didn't. I kind of debated grabbing them, but this one I had to try. Benromach 10, like I said, my favorite 10-year on the market. So jack it up to cask strength and make it a small batch. So you know there's probably concentration to get casks in it. I was pretty lit up. Does not disappoint. It's beautiful. It's rich. It is the 10 on steroids. Essentially, you still get everything, all those hallmarks. It seems maybe just a little more sherry influence here than it was getting on the 10.
And it's that sort of meaty, earthy, nutty sherry profile.
Are you getting a bit of dill pickle chips on the nose?
And James, I didn't have that note, but as soon as you said that, it hit my palate and it's 100% on the palate too.
Which, by the way, I've never picked up that note in other batches. So this is the dill pickle batch.
Ooh.
It's a little bit charry on the palate too.
You know, on the kiln dried oak, I got this sort of eucalyptus oil note, and I'm getting that on this one too. But I'm also getting this really lovely, like classic old school sherry note on it too. Like you can taste how good the sherry casks they're using for this are. Like this doesn't taste like a 10-year-old whiskey with those sherry tones coming through.
There's some minerality there too. Linseed oil, a little bit of lemon.
The strength is so drinkable.
Mm-hmm. And it's basically 60%. Let's call it.
Like it's crazy.
I mean, it's warm. You can definitely feel that warmth, but you know, this is kind of gooey, tropical. There's elements of this. I mean, this is kind of what I was starting to hint at there before. Like this reminds me of like older, like 18-year-old bottles of Ben Nevis from sherry, like old school Ben Nevis from sherry.
Fun bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I should address, I know Kevin's got lots of great comments today about batch variation. So one of the things I noticed right away when some of the early batches of cask strength started coming into Alberta is people were telling me like, oh, the old 100 proof, like these new batches don't hold a candle to it. So I've actually had the benefit of doing a couple tastings where we did like 3 or 4 cask strength batches, and then like the old 100 proof, and then the old cask strength, the one that didn't have any sherry in it. And it's surprising. A lot of people couldn't pick out the 100 proof from the new cask strength because, again, there is some variation. So I think they've kept it pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, batch variation. I mean, we can talk about whether or not, you know, how close to the line distilleries should be holding it. I mean, if the whiskey's good, like that's the most important. That's the most crucial part for me. And I know Kurt and I are on the same page on this. Like one of the things I love about distilleries like Springbank is how inconsistent batches are. And I love trying them because it's like every time it's like Christmas. You don't know what you're going to get. And Glenfiddich 15 is an example. The Solera is a good whiskey for what it is, for the price. It's very well made. Every time I try it, I have to sit back and be like, you know what? I'm too hard on this. This is quite good for the price. But it truly does almost taste exactly the same every single time because they go to such great lengths and they produce in such large vats to achieve that level of consistency. I love having that inconsistency. It keeps things fun.
That's a good call on the Glenfiddich 15. I think way too many people are way too hard on it. That's one of the only Glenfiddichs we've kept regularly in the store because it is consistent and awesome.
Mhm.
Andrew, so I'm going to hit you up here. This is a whiskey. It's big. Everybody's kind of sipping away. We always talk about a bunch of tasting notes, but you've been to the distillery, right?
Many times.
I've not been to Benromach. Tell me something.
Well, Kurt,
Surely you could say,
you should watch the 30-second video at the top of the chat. Basically, I just stood in the middle of the distillery and took like a 30-second walk around, just to like give you the sense that it's really small.
Yeah. So, Kurt,
Yeah.
what's your question?
tell us a story.
Oh, I mean, I got to work there for a day once in 2006, so that was fun. I followed Keith Cruikshank around like a lost puppy, and like turned some dials, and I think I filled a cask. I don't remember. I mean, God, it was 17-ish years ago. But you know what? It's a great distillery. I loved. I'll be honest, and maybe it was because I was too new. I loved the old 18 and 21 and 25 bottlings, and I was just like, these are gorgeous. Man, I'm never going to see whiskeys this good from this distillery again. And like, wow, time has proven me wrong on that, because so much of what they're producing is as good, if not better, than the stuff that G&M was sitting on and bottling in the early 2000s. So, you know, this is a distillery that I think even now, like maybe whiskey nerds like that really know get excited about it, but it's not a distillery that I think has got like collectors or, you know, quote unquote investors hot and bothered. And thank God, because it's left like probably one of the best distilleries in Scotland to the consumer and to the whiskey nerds. And yeah, I love the place. It's charming. It is small. It's grown since then, but they truly do things in an old school way. Like their fermentations are fairly long. They do slow distillations, and everything they do is purposeful. Like, and it's purposeful in a way like that. It's not just a job. Like you get the sense the people that work there genuinely care about it and care about the legacy of it. And not every distillery can say that, Kurt. I know you recently were telling us a story about a short-statured Elic who was, you know, taking shots at the company he'd recently left, or was about to leave. I'm not sure how many people at Benromach would say bad words about Benromach or the company, because, you know, I think they treat their employees well. Keith Cruikshank has been there now for 20 years at least. And they look after their people. It's a great business and makes great whiskey.
If I was going to predict, I do think that Benromach will inevitably slide into that role. And the reason I say that is, you know, having sold through the whole cycle of GlenDronach in the market, like in the early days, GlenDronach was not well received by people all the time. Like the amount of times people looked me in the eye and said, like, this is way too earthy for anyone to drink. Like even the heavily sherried ones, they're like, it's so funky underneath. Like it's way over sherried. Like I heard those objections every day. And the second it like people were told they couldn't have it, it just went through the roof. And I worry for sure about Benromach. But I do think that when that happens, it'll be right around the time where we'll be able to get Cairn, and then Cairn will be our new toy.
You know, but the flip side to that, James, is I think one of the things that won't happen, and I talked about this, we did a couple of 20th anniversary tastings, both in store for myself, for my ego, and Kurt's idea, but I jumped on it because I thought it was a great idea. And one of the things I talked about in that tasting was how businesses like Gordon MacPhail, Benromach don't forget how they got where they are. And I think what I believe is if they get to the point where their demand outstrips supply, they're not going to continue like some distilleries have, like forging new markets. They're going to just keep it to the ones that have been there with them the whole time, because that's what old school traditional businesses that operate like families, that's what they do. And I've no doubt that that's what they'll do in that situation as well.
Well, it's amazing. They're quite comfortable with the idea that 20 years from now, that they basically have this like funky old school peated distillery in Benromach, and then another distillery that's making basically like Speyside whiskey from the 50s, and like that's their business, period.
Mhm.
And they're totally comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally hope that when the industry is on its knees at some point in the next decade, that Gordon MacPhail will quietly reverse decision and start buying things back from people. But even if they don't, I mean, the stuff they bottled for the cairn is, if that's a goal for what they want their whiskeys to taste like, then at least there's going to be something great out there to look forward to.
You know, I love to joke with Richard that they will one day they'll get asked to bottle their own Port Ellen again because there'll be so much production.
Yeah. Well, I'll be retired by that point, I expect.
Right.
Incidentally, and I say this with all genuine sincerity, if you're going to Scotland and you're going to spend money on a tasting, like a proper good tasting, the Voyager experience at the Cairn is the single best one you could possibly do. It includes whiskeys up to 70 years old and food. And who cares if they're all blended malts? They're gorgeous. The 30-year-old, when I was in Scotland on my last trip, was their 30-year-old blended malt they made for the Cairn, which tastes like 1960s or 70s Strathisla, was the single best whiskey I tasted on my entire trip that I could actually justify buying.
I really thought the 18 reminded me of like Macallan 18s from kind of the real early 2000s that were just like crushable and sweet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the old 70s like Glen Grant or Glenlivet. I mean, they're like those old tropical. Yeah, they're great whiskeys. We've sort of lost our way here. What are we
That
on
never
to?
happens.
How we
Yeah.
found our way. It's all about the journey, man.
We sure do. All right, we've got now a trilogy of peat smoke bottlings. Now, what's really cool about this particular lineup to me is, for the longest time, we just had the peat smoke, and for the most part, these were matured in bourbon, but they never really declared them as such. It was just, this is the peat smoke, or they didn't make a big deal out of it. But now we've got a comparison vintage of 2014 bourbon cask or bourbon. Which one is the bourbon Basque? Is it the Sherry or is it the Basque Strength? I don't know. I know Evan had a typo on one of these that was pretty amazing. Where do we? Yeah, it's the bourbon Basque, the second one. So we've got three different peat smokes as the bottom line. It's going to be fun to compare these side by side. Now, James, one of them is from an older vintage, the first peat smoke I'm going to share here. And I believe when we did the pours, they were a 2009 vintage. I'm going to put this up on the screen. Do you know if
Yeah, which
this
that's a
bourbon
real old bottling actually, because I know there was a 2012 in the market too.
really? Well, I mean, maybe they just got mixed up. I mean, that's what our label here shows, bottled 2020. I could message the shop and see if, or Kurt, I don't know if you could do that. Maybe send them a text and see if they can confirm the vintage on the one other Benromach peat smoke. But the bottle says 2009, and the photo on our website says 2009 as well.
It wouldn't shock me, and just based on how it's tasting, I mean, does it not kind of taste a little bit like it's a bit touch bottle conditioned?
Oh,
It tastes
Like the
bubblegum.
peat's falling apart?
It does. And if you look at the phenol level on the bottle, like it says 42 ppm. Just for perspective, Octomore, Ardbeg, Kilchoman, Lefroy, and then you're at Port Charlotte. Well, not even Port Charlotte. This is above Port Charlotte, 42 ppm. So this is like in the top 5 most heavily peated whiskeys going. That's crazy because you don't get that on the nose.
So Jim, we're tasting the one that says bourbon cask matured, but that doesn't have a vintage on it. We're going to move on to the bourbon cask matured distilled in 2014 next, but we're starting with the 2009. Now, James, obviously these are also different ages. Like the one that we're trying now, even if it is the one we think it is, it's 10, 11 years of age, whereas the one we're going to move on to next is what, 7 to 8
Yeah,
years
7 to 8.
probably?
Yeah.
So talk about consistency, because there are still some marked similarities between those two whiskeys on the nose. Like I get this nice little agave nectar tone in there, some soft peat. The one we believe to be 2009, the first one, is definitely a little fruitier and softer, and maybe that's that bottle effect, but it's not a lot of bottle effect. It's maybe 3 years of bottle effect.
I
No,
don't
does it
think
have the
there's bottle
same?
aging there.
What's that, Kurt?
I don't think there'd be bottle aging. I think bottle aging is, 10, 15 years kind of thing. I don't know if we're seeing it this young, but it's definitely a softer, fruitier, more candy, more bubblegummy kind of flavor profile than the other.
Mhm.
Well, another thing to keep in mind, especially with the contrast peat smoke, and you encountered this with one of your previous casks,
Mhm.
like some of these things were not consistent in the production.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the situation that's going on here.
Yeah, I think the phenols on the 2014 seem way higher. And I don't think that's just time and cask mellowing it. I think that's spirit going in at a much, much higher phenol level in the malt.
Yeah,
It's
the age in barrel and then the age in bottle both probably have a small effect, but I think the much bigger factor is the production.
mhm.
And it tells you how just deceptive those phenol levels are too, because when we get those reported phenol levels, that's in barley pre-distillation. So they say you're typically at maybe a third of that. But that's universal across the board. So you're stripping away 2/3 from any number you see, whether it's hard bags 55 or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Exception being Optimore, who use a different tool for measuring. So theirs are kind of a bullshit number anyways.
I heard that. They're both lovely. They are quite different on the palate. I think that's where they really start to diverge. And I really love how Kevin has referred to the Bourbon Basque edition, comparing it to the Kill Home and Tequila finish. That is an amazing typo. Don't know if that was an Evan, a Harmony, or a Sammy, but it was definitely one of those three. Guys, what do you think about these two? What do you think about the difference in favorites here?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, I think for me personally, the 2009 just kind of is more curious. I think the 2014 is like what I expect a Benromach peat smoke to be. Like it kind of feel like it's thumping out its chest a bit with the peat, whereas the 2009 like kind of has some surprises to it.
Mhm.
So, but what I take away from this, so the peat smoke and the organic, they used to actually come every year. Like we would get a new edition and it would have new numbers on it, but actually like how it was registered and the barcode on the back was identical. Well, the reason that they've changed this is it signals to me that they're planning to be divergent with these releases in the future.
Mhm.
Like they're going to start mixing it up. Might not be next year or the year after, but yeah, I think that clearly they have some tricks up their sleeve with these contrasts in the future.
Peat Smoke Organic.
Yeah, honestly. Well, even like you probably remember, like there was that organic Golden Promise release like years ago. Like
Mhm.
they probably have more of that kind of stuff kicking around. I think they're going to tweak it. You're going to start seeing like twists
Mm.
on these releases.
And just to quickly go back to I know we briefly talked about this a few minutes ago, the triple distilled. It's funny that was a hard sell and that no one wanted it, because to me, I think the Benromach triple distilled was one of the best, like
Yeah,
sub
it's
$10.
my all-time favorite contrast for sure.
Yeah, because it was just that one was the most tropical, and it must have been in refill wood because the wood was there, but it was not dominant. And yeah, I find it all, like, to me, it's hilarious that was the one that nobody wanted, because to me that's always been one of the best, most
It's
exciting.
still in stock in our warehouse in BC and Alberta. Not to mention, it's an absolute dead ringer for like Hazelburn 10.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've got it. We love having it. It's great whiskey. If you haven't tried it, you should definitely give it a go. I think one of the reasons we didn't put it in tonight's lineup was I think it was in the last one, and I think we made a conscious decision not to try to repeat too many things. But That's just going from memory here. All right, should we delve into the sherry edition?
Let's, and Sean confirmed it's the 2010 edition.
Okay, so it's changed. It's not the 2009, it's now
It
2010.
was neither of the ones we thought it was.
Exactly.
Well, it happens, as they say. So here you go. Here's the, I'll share my screen. The Sherry Edition 2014. Now, this is a true like contrast because you've got the same vintage of Benromach, peated as well, presumably the same peating level. And I think in this case they are, aren't they? They're both 57. We
Yep.
don't have that detail on the 2014, but I believe they are the same phenol level. So you actually have a proper contrast of peating at 57 ppm, both of them filled around the same time, bottled around the same time, but different types of oak. Kurt, did Sean confirm if that one had a declared peating level on the box? Because I'd be interested to know that. I'm willing to bet that is 50 or below. It's not
I
50.
think it's 55. I know the 2012 was 55.
Well, we will delve into that. Thoughts on the nose, James, of the sherried one right off the bat?
Yeah, well, the first thing I noticed is like the last Peat Smoke Sherry was like quite sweet and had a lot of like, dried fruit and caramel on it. This one's a little bit more savory.
Mm.
Like the cask influence isn't quite as over the top as the previous edition.
It's also interesting how sherry tends to mask peat, especially in the nose. Like the peat's not coming through as prominently on the nose as it did on either of the bourbon casks. Kurt?
To me, it's like if you put Diet Pepsi with lime, with a bit of Dr. Pepper, with a bit of like root beer or sarsaparilla or something, and then smoked it all. Like it's crazy. Really, really neat palate. It kind of reminds me of some of the heavily sherried Lefroigs, Kalilas, and Kilholmans, actually.
It
doesn't have the Isla, salty medicinal tang to it because it's a different peat source, different pile of death in the bottle, if you will, but still sort of some hallmarks there.
Well, it's funny you said that because after you mentioned it, it reminds me of, we made this cocktail for something, I can't remember what for, like this is either during or before COVID, and it was called a Smoke and Coke. And it was basically peated whiskey and then premium cola, some lime juice and salt. And you're right, you get that kind of fruit character, the cola note coming in. It's an interesting expression. It's not what I was expecting from sherry and peat.
Sean says no phenol level.
Damn. Well, we'll have to delve. We'll have to delve into that. Do some digging.
James.
I'm on it.
James.
Yeah.
Something else? Any chance that you can be on? Do you have access to more of the Caragold?
No, I do not. And I know that they didn't do more of that. So that's a one-off.
Surely there's somebody's allocation that hasn't been yanked yet. You can rob Peter to pay Paul being Kensington Wine Market.
I think there might still be a little bit on Vancouver Island. If I see one, I'll keep my eyes peeled for you.
So I just did a quick search on Yield Whiskey Base, and two different 2010 vintages of Benromach are both 35 ppm for phenols. So I think that makes sense that must be what this one was too, that this must be in that 35 ppm range. So
yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. I've got the actual tech sheets. So the 2009 was still the old packaging, and it was 42. Yeah, I'm trying to find the one that's in between. Yeah, this might not shock you, but sorting through files on Gordon MacPhail's servers, I mean, would I rather potentially stab my own eyeball?
I love them, but their archive on their website is not fun to search.
Oh, I know. Can you blame them though?
Yeah.
I don't know which Tyler that is, but he absolutely nailed it. Go stick your nose back into the cask strength. It is literally brown sugar in a glass. It's not just caramelly, it's brown sugar. Good call, man.
Well, with like a nice Oloroso reduction, like it's like you're glazing like walnuts with brown sugar and Oloroso sherry.
Yeah, those good casks again. Something I'll mention about these contrasts and, talking about like Cara Gold and will it come back? You pick up these little hints and something Stuart said, kind of stuck out to me that like they do hold back some of these experiments for future releases, but I think that a lot of them will end up in bespoke cask releases. Like I think one day I'm gonna phone Andrew and say like, hey, like I can actually get like a 17 or 22-year-old like Peat Smoke Bourbon from like 2005. Like I think that kind of thing is gonna start to show up over time.
in.
I don't think anyone in Alberta would want that, Andrew.
I'm in. Why? I mean, you're basically
No,
just.
I'm joking, of course. I mean, those would be some of the most popular releases ever from Benromach.
Well, I mean, going back to like our last two Benromach casks, actually, frankly, the last three, all three of them had peating levels higher than what the standard Benromach is. They had to have. And the 2003 and to a greater extent the 02 both taste to me like Old Brewer. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I have another one of those coming too. That when I put my nose in it, I just said I need to bottle this instantly. I'd even offer to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tyler, for the shout out on that 2002. In all truth, like we just get offered things like this that are cool. And the nice thing with companies like Benromach and Gore MacPhail is they don't have a lot of lackluster things to offer. So it's rare, as James knows, that we would say no to anything that they tee up for us. So yeah, well, hopefully there'll be another Benromach at some point here in the not too distant future. But that 2002, which we're down to, I think, about 30-ish bottles of, is one of my favorite casks we've done. Like, I'm not going to say it's in my top 5, but it's definitely in my top 10 casks we've done, because we've done some incredibly insane casks over the years, like 29-year-old Imperial, 72, 39-year-old Glendronach, the Port Ellen. There's a list, because we're now until I think the 160s in terms of how many casks we've bottled as a business. So to be in the top 10, I think is an esteemed field, and that 2002 Benromach is definitely in that category. All right, gents, I think it's time for the speed round. We're going to go back through, see how everything has changed and evolved in the glass, and then I'm hoping Evan set up a poll for me. Otherwise, I got to set one up. Man, he's not been setting up polls. Oh, he did. He spoke too soon. There is a poll. I don't have to do anything. I literally just have to push click on the mouse when we're ready to go. How is that 10-year-old faring? So doughy.
Yeah, it is. But it's not that like white floury dough that a lot of young whiskeys are. It's more like it's some kind of seasoned dough or like a
Kurt,
hot cross buns or something.
I'm gonna one up you. It's that Dutch windmill place in Red Deer that makes donuts.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What it's called. What's that?
I don't know what you're talking about, but now I want to.
There's like a Dutch windmill bakery donut place. I don't like. So surely someone on this call knows what I'm talking about. It's when you're heading south from Edmonton and you have to pee, which you almost certainly have to do at some point between Edmonton and Calgary. When you're heading home, there's like this windmill donut place. The donut mill. Ken's got it. There we go. It's called the Donut Mill. And I think that specifically this is like a chocolate donut with coconut shavings. Not very speedy, by the way. But anyway, James, any refreshers on that?
Yeah, I just love that the smoke and wood has kind of like integrated, and it's kind of gotten a little cushy.
For something at 43% in a lineup of rich, intense things, it's held up remarkably well. So
I'm going to throw a really weird one at you. Those of you that may have kids, babies, go back all the way to those baby years. That white, like greasy diaper cream, the Zincofax or whatever it was called, rub on your baby's rear end. There's a little bit of that on the 10-year.
Kurt, I guarantee you, if you went to the back of all the whiskey sponge bottlings, greasy diaper cream is on at least one of them.
Probably.
And I only get it when I go to the next one and then come back to the 10. I can't just pick it up blindly on the 10, but going to the next and coming back to it. So.
All right. Air dried, because we got to keep this show on the road. There's a granola note coming off of it to me, and I don't know. There's some kind of like a toasted. It's not toasted coconut, but it's something like that.
Yeah, I like your granola note. Granola or like a fruited muesli kind of thing.
Quaker Harvest Crunch.
Lots of tobacco coming out on the finish.
Mm.
Like almost cannabis.
Mm. It's quite juicy. It's softened quite a bit over time in the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tobacco cannabis note, I get more of that on the second sip than on the first.
Yeah. That to me is on the verge of being overwooded, but it's still very enjoyable.
But by the standards of a bourbon, James, it's far from overwooded.
Yeah.
So
By the standards of virgin oak in the Scotch business, it's
you're gonna put that into a cocktail. I mean, that's got some room for maneuver, in my opinion. But it drinks really well. What about the kiln dried?
So much more lively.
It's funny you mentioned greasy diaper cream because I'm getting that now on this one. There's an oiliness, like a viscous oiliness to this one. And it's been many years since I've had to use diaper cream.
This kind of has that feel of like an Australian dessert, doesn't it? With like the frothy egg white and the tropical fruit and like the toasty crust
or like an
it's
over
big.
the top cocktail made by like an eccentric Swedish bartender where he involves olive oil and large flakes of sea salt.
That sounds really good.
Salt Bay. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I actually prefer the kiln dried, and that's not normally my style. I just think it's just a little more vibrant at this point.
You know, Kurt, I can't pick until I try both of them in a Manhattan.
I can't believe they let you rep this brand, James.
You know what? Nothing's sacred, as they say.
Nope. Especially if you pay for it, do whatever the hell you want, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I guess, sorry, we should correct. If you're going to make a cocktail with this, go and get some proper Benedictine and make a Bobby Burns.
Oh, there you go. Who even sells Benedictine anymore? Like, I remember there was a time when we might sell a case of that in a year. And now, like, if someone came into the shop asking for Benedictine, I'm pretty sure most of my staff would be like, what? Like,
It's funny you say that. The sales of Benedictine are quite good. In fact, it
probably,
even has been allocated.
it's hipsters, man. The hipsters are
Yeah,
making
it's in a lot of classic
new.
cocktails too.
Yeah. Well, I got a buddy who's like that. He's got the classic cocktail book, and he's always asking me for these like ridiculous liquors that if I ever brought it in for him, I would have the rest of them for eternity. Because yeah, old school cocktails.
Peter says Wine and Beyond has it too.
Yeah, don't buy the B&B either.
Right?
Buy the original. Buy the original. Don't buy the B&B.
What's the original?
I don't know.
Peter's saying,
Google it. You'll figure it out.
Peter's saying bring in Kummel. Benedictine secondary market. You know what is one funny side story we can go down really briefly here is one of the many strange little side businesses that Sukhinder Singh and the Whiskey Exchange got into was vintage cocktail ingredients, like selling old bottles of things like Benedictine, old bottles of vermouth. I mean, that kind of blew my mind. I'm like, when does this guy stop trying to implement all his ideas? Because I toured their warehouse and I couldn't believe it. They had all these old liqueurs from like the 70s and the 80s just there for people to buy.
There's a bar in Seattle that specializes in old bottles of Benedictine and old bottles of Chartreuse. And I have had a chance to try old Chartreuse. It's actually pretty fascinating.
Hmm. Well, another time. Seattle's a place I need to pay a visit to. Cask strength. How are we doing on the cask strength there?
Well, I'll start. Just who we were talking about. You know how Serge and Angus sometimes like they love to go on and on about like basically construction materials. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on in this now. It's like they get specific about like their brand of plaster.
Hmm. The sherry in this is quite muscular, but it's also like it's unusual. This is not, I don't know, there's something unusual about it, but it's incredibly enticing.
So if anybody here has worked the trades, I've done a few of them over my years. James is right, man. There's something about this is like being in a house as it's being built, you know, when you're like laying floor and all the trades are going, there's paint and there's like plaster and everything going on. There's something a little bit of all of that in it.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to provide a quick update on the silent auction item. Someone has placed another bid, so now the current bid is 2,200. I'm only mentioning this in case someone on this tasting is keen on buying a whole virtual tasting with a baller lineup. These are the bottles that we'd selected: North British 31, Craig Yellicky, Bladnock 88, 42-year-old Cutler and Stubbs, the Benromach we've been oohing and awing about, and 35-year-old Glendronach. So just saying, there's only a little under 4 hours left to bid. And I will either do that here in Calgary or do it virtually, or if I happen to be in your city, although I don't know that I can make a special trip just for this, but if I happen to be in your city, maybe, just maybe, I'll do it locally. But I'll throw that out there as an option. Exciting to see that there was another bid on that. Where are we now? Bourbon cask? Bourbon one? The classic bourbon cask, not the bourbon Basque. Oh man, it's a mix of lemongrass and the scent of like when you clean the underside of your lawnmower after you cut like tall grass when it's wet.
It's so fresh.
And
Like even spearmint.
So grassy.
a bit of like orange Gatorade or something behind it.
Oh,
But again, not a range of smoke elements.
So
But-
much sweetness in the palate.
but I like how the smoke is only part of it, and it's not like the single dominant characteristic. The creamy tones in there. There's like this nice banana split note, and then this lovely tart citrus, like almost like a little spritz of grapefruit comes in there too. All right. The Bourbon Basque 2014.
Raw like underripe banana.
This one smells like a compost bin that's been out in the heat.
Leave your nose in there though. All those farmy aromas just grow and grow and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the nose of this is really, really layered.
It's actually quite intense on the nose for 46%.
The palate's good. I personally feel the smoke is too dominant in it and it starts to mask other notes.
Yeah, it kind of barges in, doesn't it?
Kevin, is this the one you said earlier was like the KWM Cajon tequila or like mezcal cask?
No, I believe it was Kevin said that.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I said.
Yeah, it's got that sort of mezcal meat smoke.
Yeah.
What's always occurred to me about this is like to me a very classic nose for Benromach Peat Smoke. It kind of like doesn't exactly match another peated distillery in Scotland. Like it's kind of a new card.
Hmm.
Can you imagine what that would have been like at Basque strength?
I mean, what strength would the Basques want their whiskey to be at? I mean, they're very passionate people from what I understand, so.
I did just check, Andrew, the personalization line for Benromach would allow for Kensington Wine Market Cask Strength.
Could we
Anybody
do
ever read Trevanian?
BASQUE?
No, the EU won't allow you to do that. Maybe if you do some sort of cheese promotion with your neighbor.
I'm sure the AGLC would take issue with that, as they do with other things that I don't think they should take issue with, but.
Yeah.
Like,
You can hire the McAloney's lawyer team to defend you from the SWA.
I don't know that I would pick an outright fight with the SWA. I mean, I'll take as many shots at them as I'd like, but I think I would probably look for different lawyers than said individual.
We have to contrive a way for the AGLC and the SWA to fight each other with you kind of on the sideline.
All right, that sounds like fun. Peat Smoke Sherry.
Coke bottles, gummies.
Whole smoke. It's almost like a little bit like metallic fork.
I gotta be honest, the last batch, which was like more of that heavy sherry, I kind of missed it a little bit. I wish it had a little bit more of that kind of caramel toffee on the nose.
Well,
Like it's a very earthy, esoteric peat smoke
Mhm.
sherry.
Well, I think what's also interesting to note here is just how big both 2014s are, because I think those are probably the most heavily peated Benromachs I've ever tasted. Like, I think that to me is a bit uncharacteristic of the line. I mean, I love the fact that it's varied. If it was the same ppm every year, then that might be a bit boring. But yeah, they're big. They're big whiskeys. All right, I'm gonna fire up the poll. Because we still need to talk favorites here. So let me find the correct one. Launch the Benromach poll. Hopefully Evan has put it in the right order that we just sampled it. He hasn't, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're gonna have to use your left and right brains, I think, to get the order down here. But anyway, we had a poll and I didn't have to do anything other than click the button, so that's a plus.
You know what? The fact that the first favorite and second favorite are the same order too, because as we all know, that doesn't always happen either.
No, you know what? Actually, I wish it reminds me, and I'm gonna let people in on a little secret of something that drives me crazy. When we do ballots for bottles, we do them through Forms on Microsoft. And for some reason, Forms records entries in the order people click them, not the order the choices are laid out. So it's like there's a random generator. So every time I have to sort through those things, I have to go through and read them line by line to see what people want. So if you're submitting a ballot, just do them in the order that they're in sequence. And if that means you select them all, select them all. But I digress. Also, I'm sick of ballots, but we have to keep doing them because of Springbank and Glenallachie 18 and 30, James.
Ryan, man. Well, I will tell you, it looks like they're starting to catch up with the 18 and 21, and you might soon have that on your shelf. I like within the next 2 years. I think that's going to be a thing.
That'd be good because I've been quite happy with that. Now,
Yeah.
I know we don't do a third round, but I'm back to that Benromach 10, and it now reminds me of like a cold apple pie. But
That sounds delicious.
I mean, sometimes for breakfast, cold apple pie is about as good as you can ask for. Checking on the poll here, 12 of 17 of you have voted. If the rest of you could vote toot sweet, that would be much appreciated. If you don't know how to vote, can't really help you on that front. I think you just click on things. I'm always the one supervising said polls, so kindly do vote so that we could. Kevin never got a poll. That's odd. Are you on like is this an Apple versus PC thing? I'll be honest, I don't know because I'm not an Apple fellow here. Gonna go just check really quickly on the private tasting. Still at 2,200, which is a steal for a tasting value at $4 grand. I'm just gonna say. Kevin's got it now. Okay, where are we? Couple more people. We're at 14, 15. All right, two of you have 30 seconds to vote, or as long as it takes me to ask James and Kurt what their favorites are. So now that most people are locked in, Kurt, I'm gonna let you have 3 instead of 2. What are your top 3 here?
First of all, with a couple hours left, Andrew, I think you should be sweetening that deal as it gets closer and closer too. Like you'll do it wearing only a vest and leather pants, or just keep sweetening it up until people really, really want to bid on that.
Kurt, it's a great idea, but I intend to be in bed in an hour and 15 minutes at most. So,
anyways, actually, I had fun with the last one, so I'm going to call that number 3, the sherried one. But it was neat, and I thought the more time I spent with it, the more fun I had. Number 2, I think, would have to be the 10-year-old. I love it. Like I said, when we started this, it's just a brilliant, brilliant, well-rounded whiskey. And then the Peat Smoke Bourbon Cask. First one, not the Basque.
Not the Basque. Okay. James, favorite 3.
Yeah, third place. I'm gonna go. I just had a lot of fun with that. The bourbon cask matured, like the older bottling, the 2010. Yeah, just some cool twists and turns there. Such a unique kind of profile. Second place, I'm gonna go air dried oak. I with an asterisk that haven't tried the cocktail yet. And moving on, my favorite tonight, even though I find it actually kind of exhausting, the Benromach Cask Strength 2013. I like just knowing how things go in this business. Like this is going to be a whiskey like people talk about like a long time from now. Like it's pretty, man. There is a lot going on in there.
Glad I got one.
I was hoping that you guys would buy me just enough time to really settle down on my 3 favorites, and I think I've finally done it. I'm actually going to go Benromach 10 as my favorite, just because it's got a nice balance to it. It's not over the top, and let's be honest, a lot of the other things we've had in tonight's lineup have been a little over the top, and almost all of them have had something like that. I really liked the cask strength, but I think for my second favorite, I'm going to go the Peat Smoke 2010, and for third, I'm going to say the Kiln Dried, because that one started to grow on me. I think I like those spice tones. I liked how it was starting to go tropical. Those are my favorites. So let's see how our favorites mesh up with everyone else's. Here we go. This is fascinating. I mean, right across the board, almost everything except the 10 got a vote. The Cask Strength 2013 got a lot of votes. And then on the back end, what have we got here? The Peat Smoke Sherry 2014 storming forward. So there you go. Everything got at least a vote. For those of you that really like that Cask Strength, we've still got some stock. We also still have at least 1 or 2 6-packs left that have yet to be pulled. So those are available there too. So if you want one, it'll be there for a while. I don't know for how long, but yeah.
Man, if you're a Benromach lover though, man, are you ever well served at this exact moment in time?
Yeah. I mean, it is, I think, and I think Kurt and I are on the same page. I mean, Benromach right now is the distillery that we can't help but being continuously impressed by. And the reason for that is 25 years of continuous focus and investment from Gordon MacPhail. It's not something they did overnight. It's not something they did by re-racking a bunch of tired casks into like funky finishes or, the cask de jour. This is stuff that they've been doing for decades and doing consistently well. And I think even the ones that are not my style, I'll acknowledge are good. Like everything in this lineup tonight is good and worthy of someone buying. There's not a single one in this lineup that I would be like, yeah, we shouldn't bring that back in.
And I think it's maybe one of the coolest Renaissance or like Phoenix stories that we've seen in whiskey. You know, distilleries close and they reopen, and then you wait for things to actually become decent. And like, I'm gonna pick on what was formerly my favorite distillery, Ardbeg. All the pre-closure stuff is what everybody covets. The new school of Ardbeg is still incredible. Don't get me wrong, I love the stuff, but it's very different. It's not of the quality of what was before that. I would argue Benromach's the opposite. I would argue that since the Urquharts took over, their quality level is absolutely through the roof. There was a lot of inconsistency before. We were just lucky enough to have a lot of old stock.
Yeah.
But what they're producing nowadays is so unbelievably good and so unbelievably exciting. And I think consistently, I think the only distillery maybe more consistent at this point is Kalila. Like,
yeah. I love that Steve, one of his comments in there tonight was that this is his first time tasting Benromach. Call me impressed. I think there's one detail in the Benromach story with Gordon MacPhail that doesn't get highlighted very often, and it's that Gordon MacPhail bought Benromach in 1993, but it took them until 1998 to get it up and running. And I think that there's sort of a theme that can be read into that, which is that they don't rush into things. There's not things done by impulse or by will. Things are done purposefully and with thought. And I think, you know, James, we were talking before, like, how did the air dried and kiln dried come out? Maybe they just received a batch of wood, and it's possible they did that, but somewhere in their corporate entity, they remembered that and they tracked that, and they're like, you know what? In 10 years' time, this could make a fun release. And it's not like, oh, pretending we just found this in our warehouse. And it's not even the only interesting or unique thing they're trotting out. There's a pattern here. There's a pattern of doing things that are interesting. And, you know, at a certain point, I guess we need to stop being surprised by it.
Matthew asks what was done between 93 and 98. There was some paperwork and snarements, as there typically were, but a lot of it was just literally rebuilding and tweaking the distillery to what they wanted to
do. You know, they wanted Prince Charles to be there for the reopening, so they had to book him. He takes a lot of time to book. There's that. No, but I mean, in all honesty, like, and so I wrote an article about the Aaron Distillery for a magazine I write articles for this week. And it was sort of a similar thing. Like, one of the things I talked about in that is how it was unusual for someone to be thinking about opening a brand new distillery in 1993, which was a decade after the collapse of the industry in 82, 83. And the industry wasn't even in the recovery phase yet. And to be thinking about opening a distillery or reviving a distillery is fascinating. And I think the approach they took is they looked at it and said, all right, this is part of our plan. What are the stages to get there? And it was a laid out, purposeful process. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. And I think taking all this back around to Benromach, and I think what makes their whiskey so good, makes it such an interesting company, is that they're doing things well with purpose. There's no, it's not that, wow, how miraculous it is that Benromach is so good. Benromach is so good because they've made it good, and they've made it good with purpose. And I think that's the story that people should take away.
I can't say anything better than that.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Well, awesome tasting tonight, guys. James, thanks for joining us on this. This might be the last time we speak with some of you before the holidays. So happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and wishing everyone on this tasting a safe, happy, and prosperous New Year. We're closed for Christmas and Boxing Day, and then the 1st and 2nd of January as well. And look forward to seeing you either in person or at a virtual event. And if for whatever reason you've got a hankering to purchase your own private tasting of Baller whiskeys with yours truly, or you could potentially, just noticed Phil Thorpe is currently the highest bidder. Well done, Phil. It's now at 2,300. We'll figure something out for you. Maybe it's local, maybe it's not. but the proceeds go to a good cause. They go to the Calgary Food Bank. Yeah, love seeing that. So thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Be well, and look forward to chatting you all again soon. And James, thanks again for being our third wheel in the best possible way.
Anytime.
Now you were the front of the tricycle.
Yeah. No, James, you're always a pleasure to have on here. Kurt, thanks for your time.
Pretty sure I'm the seat. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Take care.